Okay, let's get started. Thanks for joining me. My name is Bob Hartford. I'm Vice President of Business Intelligence Products with Potomac Wave Consulting. I head up the Fed Data Check team. From the list of who has subscribed, virtually all of you, I believe, are familiar with Fed Data Check. If not, we'll get into it. Today, we're going to talk about robotic process automation and a CO's watch list. So, in short, how a contracting officer can easily get a cheat sheet as to what they some areas that they need to put some attention on. Okay, I did. Deborah, I see your hand up. I'll get to you in just a second. The agenda for today. We're going to look at Fed Data Check's CO report, Contracting Officer report, and how to generate it. Fed Data Check Supervisor CO report, and how to generate that. And also what it entails. Our YouTube channel, which is helpful if you want to remember on how to create these reports or we have short how-to videos out there now that I wanted to bring to your attention. What is robotic process automation? I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It seems to be a hot topic, particularly in the last year or two. We're going to take a deeper dive into the Fed Data Check concept of data checks, relates to FPD/SCG data quality, get into a precise definition of expiring awards, and an associated data check we have at Fed Data Check number 90, where we flag awards where the expiry date we feel is incorrectly inputted into FPD/SCG. Higher risk vendors. That would be, for example, obviously a vendor who is debarred and is working on an active contract. So they were not debarred when the award was made. Sometime over the course of working on your contract, they may have been debarred by a different agency. That puts them in the higher risk category. And a review. We do offer a CLP point, continuous learning point on this. We recommend, I should say, one CLP point for attending these webinars. We're going to send out a training certificate later today regarding your attendance to help ensure that your FATAS representative grants that CLP point. You do have to stay on for, we say, almost the length of the webinar, and it's good to keep your screen share on your main monitor and respond to the poll question. So stay with us, keep the screen share on your main monitor, respond to the polls. That more ensures that you get that CLP point credit. Now, I did see a hand raised on a question. I think it was Deborah. Did you have a question to start? Okay. If you do have a question, you can raise your hand. You can also type in a question. I'll try to keep an eye on it. We do have a good group today. We do try to keep things as interactive as possible. So if you have a comment, question, do not save it to the end. We prefer you jump in while we're talking about the topic. All right, some definitions. This is really for future reference. The PowerPoint is available for download now. If you don't see it, I'm going to send you the PowerPoint deck later today anyway. The main concept here, I just want to, that may be a little confusing, or you not have heard of it, was this concept of affirmative responses, derogatory information. So that would be, let's say, as we're going to get into it in FAR 522095, the vendor has to check whether they've had a tax delinquency in excess of, I think it's $3,500 within the last 3 years. A negative response, which is actually a good response in this context, is they check the box, have not had a tax delinquency in excess of $3,500 within the last 2 or 3 years. We're going to look at 2095 in a bit. So that would be a negative response, which in this case is good. An affirmative response would be they check the have box. So affirmative responses in terms of have had a tax delinquency. Another one is I think they are. They have had a felony conviction. Things along those lines would be affirmative, and that would be a type of what we call derogatory information. We'll get into that more, but those would be two that are of this list here that you would not be as familiar with as the others. Here's the higher risk vendor. Higher risk vendor we define as a vendor that has a debarment record. There are different types of debarment records, as we'll see, but one of them is a completed debarment. An affirmative response in SAM that we just talked about regarding a tax delinquency or felony conviction. There's a few other categories. Or a termination for cause of default in FPDS-NG or FAPIS. If you got something in those three categories, we put you in the higher risk vendor label on you. So you got a question is, when we label someone a higher risk vendor, is it real time? And the CO report, the answer to that is yes and no. We go out and the SAM data is real time. We go out and check it when the request is made, as we'll see. For FAPIS, we load it once a day. For FPDS-NG, we run 2 days behind. So a termination for cause of default that we pull from FPDS-NG, out of necessity, we're 2 days behind what was entered into FPDS-NG. Hope that answers your question. We'll get into it more. Good question. Okay, let's do, what would be great is if right now, let's have, if people can do this, I think it would really help. What I'd like you to do is start your email, and it's very simple. This will take 30 seconds. So here I am. I'm going to click on new email, and I'm going to type in CO report at FedDataCheck.net. That's all you have to do. CO report, contracting officer report, CO report at FedDataCheck.net. Hit send. You don't need a subject line. You can put one in if you want, but you don't have to. And I'm going to go through just what I did there and what you can expect. Can you get an email back from us in about 2 minutes? I'm having trouble with my questions here. Hold on. Here we go. All right. I see a couple questions now. I can see it. James, we're going to get into that real time more. Shirley, do you also check for the new rep and cert on covered telecommunications equipment? Boy, that's a good question. The answer to that, we have looked into that. So I think, and based on your question, Shirley, we should look at that more. I'm going to come back to that, Shirley. Good question. Okay, so what we did to get the CO report, hopefully some of you've done it. All you got to do is send your email to COreport@FedDataCheck.net, and you're going to get back information that pertains just to you. Subject line, you can put in hello world, requesting report, or just leave it blank. This is what you're going to get back, and we're going to go through some examples. Now, here's one point. Anybody with a .gov email address can make this request. We call this an email domain, everything after the @ sign. There are also some domains that we were not familiar with. Bureau of Indian Affairs Education. So if you look at BIE EDU, that is actually a government, BIE EDU, Bureau of Indian Education, Department of Interior. So they don't have a .gov email address. They got a BIE.edu email address. Smithsonian, now that I think about it, is SI.edu. So if you do work with one of these groups that does not have an email address that ends in .gov, send an email to info@feddatacheck.net and we'll add it. Otherwise, you're sending them email to CO report, and you're going to get back an error message from us. In about 2 minutes, you're going to receive an email back and the email is going to be from alerts@feddatacheck.net, and it's going to include a PDF file, such as this one here. How about a show of hands? Who's sent an email and who's gotten something back yet? Anybody? There we go. Timothy got one back. Brian got one back. A lot of people got them back. Great. Okay, let's look at what's in the CO report. So in the first section, we're going to, well, let's go back here actually. There are three, let me go to this report. There are three sections. Section 1 is going to be data quality issues that Fed Data Check has found associated with your transaction. The transactions where you're the prepared by user in FPDS-NG. Not the last modified user, the prepared by user. That's section 1. Section 2, we're going to list all your active awards and IDVs, and we're going to list them in the order in which they're expiring. And then in section 3, we're going to list your higher risk vendors on your active awards. So if you have them, maybe, again, it's possible when some of you look through your report today, you'll have a vendor who is now debarred from receiving new contracts with the federal government. It could happen that the sequence was you made the award to Acme Inc. 4 years ago. They're doing great then, and they're still doing great with you now. But 2 months ago, they just got debarred by the Navy for something they shouldn't have been doing. Obviously good to know that even though they're performing well on your contract, they are debarred. Any new option years are really out of the question, as are any new awards with that vendor. You could get either, I believe it's head of agency to approve a contract extension. Unlikely. All right, let's take a look at what's in this first section, FPDS data checks. Again, it's based on the prepared user. So if you look at FPDS-NG in the upper right, if your user ID is up here, then that could be a transaction that we list in this section if we feel there's a data quality issue associated with it. This section shows the good and the bad. It shows FPDS-NG transactions with not corrected data quality issues. It also shows those that we flagged and then you subsequently corrected. And it shows your error rate. That would be the number of awards, the number of transactions where you're the prepared by user, that's the denominator. The numerator would be all those transactions that we feel have one or more errors in it. Well, Randall just raised a good question. He made a request, and his email is for service, fs.fed.us. I'll have to look into that, Randall. That could be. All right, let's take a look at this example here. So for this individual, they sent in this report. We flagged 8 transactions with an error. He or she has corrected 6. 2 are outstanding. They are the prepared by user on 42 transactions in the current fiscal year. 2 of those have 1 or more errors in them. That gives them a data quality rate of 4.8%. 5% and below is considered good. Right, so here we're saying we list the checks that are still outstanding, invalid additional reporting. That's that new field, 7G is it? In FPDS&G, we feel that based on the parameters in the report, employment eligibility verification should have been checked. So they could come down here to 150 and they can read our reasoning. Employment eligibility verification is required when the SAT is exceeded, place of performance is the USA, so on. And they can also click on it. I'm going to lose it. Well, let me go out. You can go out. The individual could click on that hyperlink. Anytime you see that blue underline, they can go out and look at it. And we're talking about the additional reporting field here. They have none, and based on the criteria that was listed in the report, we feel that this should be checked. So, and you know, where applicable, we give the FAR references as well. So, did we have any for Check 50? Yep, we did. So you can go out and read the applicable FAR regulations, subtopics related to that check, and see if you agree with our reasoning. Okay, Randall, just good news. You just got yours back. Okay. Okay, now the key, I got a question here. When you send in that email, one, you might get nothing back if, in fact, in the current year, you are not the prepared by user on any FPDS&G transaction. Or, you know, so there's a couple things have to happen here. You have to be the prepared by user on an FPDS&G transaction that has a data quality issue or one that you corrected. You have to have an active award or IDV in which you're the prepared by user, or you have to have a higher risk vendor. If you don't have any of those, I guess that's kind of good news. There's nothing on your watch list, at least as far as this report is determined. So that's one way you would not get any data back in this report. And another one is we base it off of your email address. So when you send in your email, that's why I sent out some requests to some people earlier. You give us your email address, we then have to be able to match that to an FPDS&G user ID. And we do that by our points of contact running what's called a list of users report out of FPDS&G. That report does just that. It lists all of the user IDs, it lists all of the email addresses associated with those user IDs. So if we're not able to do that match, that would be another case where you would want to send an email to info@feddatacheck.net. Okay, so FPDS&G data quality gives you an outstanding to-do list on transactions that have been flagged with some data that we feel is erroneous. We're going to do a deeper dive in the data checks too here in a second. Okay, section 2, expiring awards. What is an expiring award? That seems like a stupid question, but I don't believe it is. For a BPA call, definitive contract, delivery order, purchase order, those four fall into the category of awards if you're using the FPDS&G data dictionary. The expiring award is based on the completion date, not the ultimate completion date, the completion date. So you make a classic award where you got a base year and 4 option years, and you're in the second year. Your second year could be ending 9/30/2020, and then you got 3 more years after that. So the ultimate completion date is 9/20/2023, if I got my dates right. So there's going to be years difference between the current completion date and the ultimate completion date. An expiring award is based on the current completion date, also known as the completion date, also known as the end date. So let's take a look at one right here. So here's this individual, Julia, it doesn't really matter, but Jillian doesn't have any, has done 8 transactions and has no data quality issues. Good for her. But as she's looking through this, and we can click on this award here, Juliana knows that not all the money has been obligated on this award. The ultimate completion date is in 2024, but the current one actually is 2021. Well, let's see if we got one that's even more. I'll use that one, but I want to see if there's another one here. Let me look at this one. They're both 2021, so we'll stick with this one. So what she needs to do is, about this time next year, she needs to exercise another option to keep New Tech Solutions going and progressing towards 2024. In other words, this award is expiring on 5/10/2021 as it stands now. Awards are listed by days remaining, with those expiring soonest listed first. So let me go back to that report. So you can see here, this one, for this individual, in 24 days, they have an award that's expiring here. Now, there may or may not be options to exercise. It could be that, here the end date and the ultimate end date are the same, but particularly for these here, such as this one, you can see my screen, where you do have some time left on the contract, you're going to want to take action here in the next 86 days to keep Leidos going, assuming that's in the government's interest. And we're going to talk about a data check, how that relates to it. The point being, some people, based on data check number 90, can make the end date and the ultimate end date the same. And that would be problematic as it relates to this report, because you wouldn't get a signal as to what should be on your radar, and that that example we just looked at, if mistakenly, where was that Leidos one here? If they put the completion date 7/31/2024 and the ultimate completion date 7/31/2024, then this would be way down the list. You wouldn't be tapped on the shoulder and 86 days, it's coming up. Instead, the current, ostensibly, the current option period would expire, in which case that award's done. We do have exceptions, James, to how we calculate whether an award's expiring and the ultimate. Well, we'll get into that. Data check 90, James, I think might answer your question. We'll see. All right. How about expiring IDVs? There is no, as you know, there is no completion date, an ultimate completion date on an IDV. They have a IDV last date to order along with a start date. There's another synonym for start date. Effective date. So these two drop out on an IDV and they're replaced by a single date field, last date to order. IDVs, awards again in FPDS&G speak. BPA calls, delivery orders, definitive contracts, purchase orders, IDVs, these five. Same concept. In your CO report, IDVs are going to be listed with those expiring soonest first. So here you got, for this individual, when this was run, you got 138 days to the last date to order on Strategic Innovation Solutions. You're going to put a new award in place or whatever you're going to do to keep their services in order for your agency. Action has to be taken in the next 138 days. Any questions or comments so far? Timothy, did you have a comment? Or?
No.
Okay. Susan, any comment or question? Okay. I'm trying to keep track. It's a big group, which is great, and now we're going to get into those higher risk vendors. First of all, we're only including it on active awards. So, if you've had an award that expired in February, and that February, a couple months ago, and, that vendor was convicted of a felony, had tax delinquency problems, and was debarred, we're not going to include it in the report. Why? Well, they're not supplying products or services anymore. So only for active awards, that would be those working on awards with a completion date. Do I define it? Right, the completion date is on or after the current date, or an IDV whose LDTO is on or after today's date. What is a higher risk vendor? They have a SAM debarment record. And as we'll see, not all debarment records are the same. They have derogatory information in FAR 52-2095, 52-2011. We're going to see what that is in just a second. Or they've had terminations for cause of default recorded in FAPIS or in FPDS&G within the last 3 years. Actually, I should correct that. That's 99% of the time. There are also other types of records in FAPIS, such as administrative records, or they haven't been paying their subcontractors. Yeah, so 95% of the records in FAPIS relate to terminations for cause of default. But if they have one of those other types of records, that would also make them a higher risk vendor as well. So I'll correct that before I send out the PowerPoint. Any record in FAPIS doesn't have to be a termination for cause of default. Now let's look at one. Okay. So here's a report run for someone in HHS, Center for Disease Control. And if they scroll down to their higher risk section, they got something. So this vendor, Health Research, has checked that they've had a criminal offense within the last 3 years, and they're presently indicted. Let's see if that's still the case. It was when I ran it, or at least I ran it yesterday. Let's see if they're still the case today. Okay, here's Health Research. It is an active award for this Center for Disease Control. The completion date is set in the future. We'll grab the DUNS number, and we'll go on to Sam. Search records, plug in the DUNS number, search. Okay, there's Health Research Inc. Now, a lot of people, based on the GAO report that I don't reference, but they stop there. They don't see any debarment. They don't see a purple record. So a lot of COs, at least historically, have been stopping here. That's number FAR 9.1 says, click view details, reps and certs. And what was this? Okay, this is under FAR 522095. Okay, so again, you saw me put the DUNS number in, hit search, click search, then clicked on reps and search. Now I'm going to come down to 522095. Okay, remember when we use the term derogatory information. FAR 9.1 uses the term affirmative response. So they are not presently debarred. That would be a negative response. That's good. They have. So that's an affirmative response. Yes, we have. Within a 3-year period preceding this offer, been convicted of or had a civil judgment rendered against them for commission of fraud, criminal offense, so on. Here's another affirmative response. Yes, they are presently indicted. Okay. So when this individual from the CDC when they run their CO report, they would know that Health Research Inc. has indicated in SAM that they're having some issues adhering to the law. I have a question here from Marjorie. Since Section 1 is data based on the preparer, how does the CO that has a CS initiate the FDSCG and the CO completes it, search for the information? Good question, Marjorie. I guess that would have the CS submit the request, but maybe we should think about how we can alternate that. So that's often the case where the CS may prepare it, and the CO reviews it for accuracy. In that case, when the CO requests the report, they're not going to see anything. Why is that? Well, the CS was the prepared user. One way is to get the CS to submit their email request. Now, if you'll see on that report, if we will list the number of terminations for cause or default. And also in FAR, let's take a look at FAR 52911. So that's 522095, 522011. There are also some questions there that we pull out for the CO report. Do they have a current unpaid federal tax liability that has been assessed and which judicial remedies have been exhausted? And have they been convicted of a felony criminal violation within the preceding 24 months? And we check if they have any debarment records that this would be checked. Same debarment, affirmative responses in 20911, affirmative responses in 2095, terminations for cause of default. Okay. Oh, what should you do? You know, what? Okay, so they said this case they had a criminal offense presently indicted. What do you do if you got an affirmative response, derogatory information in 52-2095? Check the appendix. Come down here to Appendix A. Okay, here's 52-2095. This is right out of the FAR, and it tells you the steps you need to take. First thing to do, check with the vendor. Make sure that it's not a typo. Second, you have to notify prior to proceeding the award, in accordance with agency procedures, the agency official responsible for initiating debarment or suspension action. So when you find something up here in terms of derogatory information, we list the SAM, the FAR steps required for you to take action. That would be, by the way, there's nothing, you know, this would be if you make a new award to health research, those actions would be required. Yeah. If they had a criminal offense while performing on your award, there is no FAR requirement that I'm aware of, that steps that you must take, other than that obviously would be a good thing to know. Yeah. Or put them on a more closely watched list in terms of their performance, I would think. What do? Check Appendix A. You know, a lot of typos in SAM. A lot of times when vendors get back, hey, what do you mean I've been convicted of a felony? Well, that's what you check. What? And then they go and they correct it. Let's see, do I have the right? One thing we could do is a poll. Do slideshow, start from this one. So, I'd be interested to see if there are other, besides the one you just did, hopefully use robotic process automation with us. Is there another, like a UiPath or something else, automation anywhere? Is there something else where you send an email and you get back a formatted report? I know that the Department of Treasury, IRS, has been doing a lot, investigating this type of technology. Prism Unison, in cooperation with UiPath, has been doing some things in this area. Okay. There's the results. Some, not many. Okay. Now on the supervisor CO report, the first thing you have to do, and there's some supervisors on here now. So what you can do to, let me demonstrate that first of all. Let's assume I was a supervisor, and I would send an email to supervisor CO at feddatacheck.net, and then I would attach a text file. And I've already created one, so let me get that. here. I'll open that up. So here I am. I'm Bob Hartford at PotomacWave.com, and I'm requesting. Imagine we're doing FPDS-NG transactions, which is unlikely given these email addresses. But I want to get a CO report on J. Smith and S. Jones, and notice that they also ended PotomacWave.com. Then I would hit send here. So that's how you do it. But the first thing that has to happen is I, Bob Hartford, have to be designated as a supervisor in Fed Data Check. If you want to send an email to supervisorco@feddatacheck.net and get something back, the first thing that has to happen is you have to be designated as a supervisor. How does that happen? Well, one way to do it would be to log into Fed Data Check, assuming you have an account. Anybody can have an account whose agency subscribes to Fed Data Check, which I believe is all of you. Most of it, down 99% of you on this conference, on this webinar. So here I'm logged in as an HHS user. I'm going to click on the HHS logo. You can have Michael McFarland email us and say, Bob, Charlie Jackson is a supervisor. Okay, that then enables Charlie to use the supervisor CO@feddatacheck.net report. Another thing you can do, if you know your agency's POC, is just have them email, or you can email us at info@feddatacheck.net. We could start a conversation on that. But you do have to be designated as supervisor first. Then, as you saw me do it, send an email to supervisorco@feddatacheck.net. Attach a file, and it has to be an ended.txt with an applicable list of CO email addresses. Subject line can be left blank. So here's the example. Here's an example I gave. Imagine Bob Raleigh, B.Raleigh@FWS, Fish and Wildlife, FWS.gov. He wants to get a list of these CO reports for these 3 FPDS-NG users. So that's what he would do there. Now, if he put in sjenkins@gsa.gov, you wouldn't get it for S. Jenkins. You can only get it for those who have an email address that ends the same as yours. Must match. The email domain of the requester must match those attached in the file. What's in the supervisor CO report? You're going to get back the same thing we just saw in the CO report. So when Bob Raleigh put in that request for those 3 users, he's going to get back 3 emails, each for the CO report, same CO report that we just viewed. James, it's for the current fiscal year. So it's all transactions signed in the current fiscal year. That's for the data quality. And then for the expiring awards, it's whatever is active. And the higher risk vendors only apply to those vendors with derogatory information on active awards. But in terms of data quality, it's for transactions. Let me double check that. I believe it's transactions signed in the current fiscal year. I'm going to have to check that. I believe it is signed, though. Could be last modified by, but I believe the date is signed. I'll clarify that. Okay. Now, we do have a YouTube channel, and I have a slide here on how to get there. So, and that's if you want a reminder, a quick reminder, a review on how to do this. You can click on the link here. See what I got out there. Well, go to YouTube. Type in Fed Data Check. Here's our channel. You can click on there.
Fed Data Check, I did it.
And then the best thing to do, okay, here you are at the channel. Click on playlist. That's categories of videos. And then robotic process automation. This is all in the slide. And here's a 2-minute video on the supervisor CO report, 2.5 on the CO report, gives you all the ins and outs. If you want to refresh your memory or introduce a colleague on how to use this capability. But, and also, if you could hit subscribe, that would be great. If you see this yellow button and subscribe to it, that would give you a notification when we post new videos. It couldn't be more than 1 or 2 a month. And if we get to 100 subscribers, we're getting close, we get to have a better URL rather than that not, the crazy one you get now, which is, now you can see that we'd have something that says Fed Data Check rather than this massive string of alphanumeric characters. Anyway, and there are other useful videos we put out there but we're coming up with that playlist of short how-tos on how to use this and other functionality. We talked about robotic process automation. What is it? Gartner is a well-known firm in terms of reporting on information technology, and they define it as a productivity tool that allows the user to configure one or more scripts, which some vendors refer to as bots, to activate specific keystrokes in an automated fashion. So if you imagine let me get caught up here on grab. So let's say you wanted to do a customer responsibility assessment on Potomac Wave Consulting. You were going to do it manually. Well, it's a repetitive, routine, routinized process. First thing you'd probably do is you would start Google Chrome. You would click on SAM. You would click on search records. You would paste in a DUNS number. You'd hit search, and on and on and on. Then you would maybe start a new tab. You would type in FAPIS. So these are all clicks, keystrokes, points. So imagine, as you're going through that, imagine you had a robot, literally a robot, a Star Wars robot sitting right next to you. Mr. Bot or Mrs. Robot, Ms. Robot had their own laptop, and they were just looking over your shoulder, seeing what you were doing. Okay, I saw that you started Chrome. I saw that you typed in sam.gov. I saw that you pasted in a 9-digit number. And then that robot had a memory tape and could remember the steps and the clicks and the points that you did. So then once you train that robot sitting right next to you with their laptop, going forward, all you have to do is write down a DUNS number on a piece of paper and hand it to them. And then they could go and execute the steps and do the CRA for you. Doesn't take much thought, really, assuming that if there's no derogatory information, it's a routinized task. That's what an RPA is. Another form of it, in terms of how we use it, imagine when you send that email to co-report@feddatcheck.net, imagine that there's a human-like, a cyborg, a robot sitting at the other end on our email server. Mr. Bot clicks on your email, reads it, and then he goes off to his laptop, checks your data quality errors in FPDS-NG. He's scurrying about collecting the information. Okay, what's your data quality? Do you have any expiring awards? Let me check FPDS-NG, run an ad hoc report. Do you have any vendors who been convicted of a felony? Let me go off and check SAM. That robot collects it all in a nice PDF. He then grabs his laptop, fires up an email, attaches that PDF, and sends it back to you. So if you can imagine an entity on the other end of these requests, that's what we mean, and what I'll say Gartner means by a robotic process automation, a routinized task being performed by a software program. I hope that helps. What is a data check? If you look at, we get time to do this, maybe not. No, we're getting close. What is a Fed data check? Data check. It's a FAR violation. It's data in an FPDS-NG transaction that represents a FAR violation, FAR inconsistency, or a logical inconsistency. So I'll just jump over here. And an easy one is check 10. So an award went to a small business, and they included the cost accounting standards clause. So I come down here, I see small business, and the cost accounting standards clause is always a little hard to find. Here it is. Yes. CAS clause included. Well, can you do that? R 30.000. This part, Cost Accounting Standards Board rules, does not apply to sealed bid contracts or to any contract with a small business concern. That's an inconsistency. Hey, you said it went to a small business. You included the CAS clause. How do you explain that in terms of FAR 30.00? One type of thing applicable to a data check. Another one is this one. Would be a logical inconsistency. A sole source award that received more than one offer. Not aware of any click on that. Thank you. There we go. So if I come down to type of set aside, 8A sole source, number of offers 3. Well, how did that happen? So that's what we mean by a data check. There is an exception process where a CO can say, and the 2 examples I have, I don't know, but recently came up with, we flag awards if it's an 8A, competed 8A set aside, and the base and all options value was under $4 million and was on a BPA call, and that's under some dispute now. SBA is saying that's a recommendation, it's not an actual requirement. So SBA apparently is giving different answers on that, and that's being worked out now. So people can challenge our logic as well. And there are other times where it is a false positive. So we try to, 99% plus right, but there's sometimes when what looks like an inconsistency actually isn't. Now here's one on an expiring award. We have a data check where it says, hey, you filled out an award and the completion date and the ultimate completion date are both 2 years out in the future. It's a mod 0. the obligated amount is less than the base on all options value, in the indication that there's option years out there. It's not a multi-year contract. It's not, doesn't have an appropriation that spans more than 1 year. We exclude things like utilities. And I have an example on that right here. So here's one here, just awarded. They got the completion date in 2025, the ultimate completion date in 2025. So it looks like the current period of performance is 5 years, but the action obligation is less than the base and all options value. So it looks like what they really meant to say was this is 2021, and there's going to be some option years out there. So we would flag this with our check number 90. So then the question would be, when does that award, when does the current period of performance expire? So if this individual waited until 04/22/2021, well, let's just say June. They got to June 2021 and they said, oh my gosh, my CO report didn't list this as expiring soon, because it went off of this date, which would have been thousands of days in the front, but actually I miscoded it. Now this date has passed and I want to keep this vendor going, so I'll exercise the option now in June. Well, you can't do that. You got to issue a new award. I understand that there's some controversy in that, but I'll leave that to you and to read this and see if you agree with that. But if the current period of performance, the current option year, it comes and goes, and you don't exercise the next one, that award's done. Point being, these checks will help you keep track of what's on your watch list. Higher risk vendors, the point I'm making here, that when you look in a SAM debarment, not all of the records are the same. So if you look at Duke Energy, this one comes up. And so here's Duke Energy. Wow, they got purple. Wow, I can't make any awards to Duke Energy. Well, if you look at the detail, what they're saying is it's a prohibition restriction, and it was only ineligible at a particular facility due to EPA violation. So that's not great, but it's not shall we call it a death sentence for the entire Duke Energy Corporation. Whereas if you look at someone else, such as this vendor that recently became debarred, they got a purple. Actually, that was a while ago they got debarred, but they've gone through all the systems, their proceedings are complete, they're debarred. Well, they're can award new contracts, place new orders, extend duration, on and on and on, unless the agency head or designee approves it. So the point being, not all of those SAM debarment records are the same. Proceedings completed or proceedings pending, those are identical. Doesn't matter whether it's completed or pending. In terms of procurement restrictions, it's the same. FAPIS is not a particularly reliable tool for identifying terminations for cause of default. Here's a video on it. We did a webinar on that in the past. One thing you may know, was news to me, was that you're actually not required to report a termination for cause or default to FAPIS unless the award's value, unless the award's value exceeded the SAP. You're not required if it's less than or equal to the SAP. So you get a lot of terminations for cause or fault in FPDS&G that are not reported to FAFSA. We have a Fed Data Check CRA report. You can get that off of our YouTube channel. We feel that's a better way to check terminations for cause or fault than by going to FAFSA. All right, in review, and to speak through that a little bit at the end there. As is my normal, I'm gonna run a little late on these, but you want to make sure your FPDS&G transactions are coded accurately. If you don't want to be surprised that an option year period jumped up on you, you got to take action quickly. You want to be aware of a vendor. You know, again, they weren't convicted of a felony when we started with them. 3 years later, wow, I didn't know that. They ran into some major problems. Okay, well, it's good to be aware of that. It would be hard to do it manually. Well, once a month, send an email to co.report@feddatacheck.net. That's our recommendation. If you're in a supervisory position, supervisor co@feddatacheck.net. Catch that text file. All right, I'm a little bit over. I kind of left some of these questions here. Lindsay, is it possible to get something similar to the supervisor list, but a CO list for those who have multiple CSs under them? Yep, Lindsay. Yeah, we just want, what we want to avoid on that supervisor co@feddatacheck.net. I'm sure it wouldn't. It might happen. We don't want Jeff Smith, who's a CS, checking up on the work of Harry Johnson. So that was the intent there, and that's why Harry Johnson can't submit a request to get the CO report on. He can only get the report for his. But if we get the okay, the thumbs up from our POC or from a management official at your agency says, yep, this person is a supervisor, they can run it for multiple people. That was that manual check we had there. Let me see if I got any other things up here. Anybody else have any? I had one more poll I wanted to do, but it's time's up. I went over. Any other final questions, comments? Let me see if I can see if anybody's hands are up here. All right, that's it, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to go through some more about who I am and who Fed Data Check is, but that's not really part of the webinar. If you haven't heard that, you might be interested. Otherwise, feel free to drop off. If everyone does want to stay on just for a second, I would be interested in this last poll here. Who wants that? See if you got anybody. Have you ever been in that situation where you were contracted with a vendor? They were doing great. They were clean record when you started, but then 2 years after they got debarred, or 3 years after they had a felony conviction. So I think got some yes answers on that. Okay. So let me share the responses there. So we did get some yes responses on that. Post-award, the vendor ran into some problems. Boy, it'd be great if someone could raise their hand. I could unmute you, and you could explain what that was. If you want to make a comment. Marjorie, did you have an example like that or that hand up from earlier? Okay. Well, anyway, any COCS that I've ever talked to on that said, boy, if you are on an active award and they did get the BARD subsequent to it, would you want to know? And everyone said, yeah. I mean, let's put them on a more closely watched list. Let's make sure we're not going to have any trouble with them. One of our fellow agencies obviously had major trouble. So it's not that you have to terminate the vendor immediately, obviously, but keep a closer eye on them is the universal response that I've heard. Okay, just to go through with me, Bob Harford, here's my contact information, other members of the team here. We're actually having a couple other people start June 1st. So our group is growing, which is great. Thanks to you and your agencies. This is new capability I showed you today. We hope to be bringing you some more. I think we did have some NOAA people on today. We're thrilled about that. It's quite an honor. I don't know how else to put it. It's great being the NOAA Small Business of the Year. If you do go to Fed Data Check, if you could hit that subscribe, hopefully you get some good information as to new videos, and we want to get out of those complex URLs. If you're not a subscriber, if your agency is not a subscriber, we do offer a trial, 4-month trial for $5,000. I'll be sending you the CLP point, recommended CLP point later today. We're not a small business anymore, Potomac Way. Graduated to OTSP, but we're still on a lot of vehicles. Procurement metrics is what we do, not just data quality, as you saw today. We have other capability that will help you in your contracting, procurement, and a lot of other areas. If you have suggestions, we'd love to hear. How much over am I? 10 minutes. That's about par for the course. Any final questions, comments? If I missed anything, I don't think I did. How do we get a Fed Data Check account? Marjorie, we'll set one up for you right now. If you are a Fed Data Check subscriber and in the procurement community, you can get an account. But to answer your question, send an email to info@feddatcheck.net. Okay. Yeah, James, you're right. The corrected is probably based on, they could have corrected independently, but it's probably based on an email alert they received from Fed Data Check or a report that you've run. Okay. Hey, that's it, everyone. Thanks a lot. I don't see any other questions. I'll review the questions here. There's a lot I kind of started racing through. But... All right. See everybody. Hey, next week we're going to do it on COVID-19 reporting. That might be interesting. And we have a new check and a new way to analyze that. So if you're interested in COVID-19, give us. I'll send out another notice this week. Hope to see you then. That'll be. That's given it so timely. We're not going to wait a month. We're going to do it next week. See you, everyone.